So when it comes to racing games, there is a massive selection to choose from. You have different styles, vehicles, levels of realism. Essentially, if you think of a racing game, it probably exists. And while the genre has spawned some incredible franchises, it's also responsible for some unholy garbage. For instance, this. Now, I absolutely do not have to explain what this is trying to be, but if you somehow haven't worked it out, the original name was apparently Barry Hatter, the Sorcerer's Broomstick. Anyway, this game comes courtesy of Data Designer Interactive, and if you haven't heard of them before, they're a company that released what is apparently one of the worst games ever made, reskinned it 3 times, and then re-released it under different names, all in the space of 4 months. Oh, and they were sometimes given 6 weeks to make a video game. So yeah, should give you some example of what Billy the Wizard Rocket Broomstick Racing is going to be like. Okay, so how this game works is you have 3 modes to choose from, each of the modes has 6 levels, and that's it. And you might say, well, that's a bit bare bones, and yeah, it is, because bare bones is literally this game's middle name. Well, this game, and from what I read, every other DDI game, but that's a topic for another time. So, the first mode is Broomstick Grand Prix, which is essentially just your standard race. The goal here is to do 3 laps around off-brand Hogwarts, place first, then move on to the next stage. However, actually doing any of this is much easier said than done. Mainly because this game has arguably the worst controls I've ever fucking seen, and I'd have an easier time steering a pedalo with my head. It is genuinely impossible to go where you actually want to, which is bad enough under normal circumstances, but for one very specific reason, they've combined them with a style of racing that requires fucking accuracy. And as you can imagine, the result is horrendous. The game expects a ridiculous level of precision, yet provides the most unsuitable tools for the job. Just imagine if someone said, right, we need you to cut a perfect circle in this glass, here's a pencil, a plank of wood and a nail. It also doesn't help that there's basically 0 room for error, because if you miss a ring, and trust me you will, then just give up. Because the amount of time it takes to correct your mistake is more than enough time for the AI to get a lead so big it's impossible to catch up. I mean, they do provide rocket boosts for speed, which not only makes no sense, but considering I can't maneuver normally, how on earth am I supposed to do it at Mach 3? Now granted, I did eventually beat the levels, but even then, it never felt like I was getting any better at the game. I just got lucky enough to not make a mistake, or get hit by the tidal wave of enemy projectiles. And all of this might make you wonder, why on earth didn't they just do normal racing? Well, here's why. See, you might have noticed all the footage is seemingly from the same race. It's not. In reality, this game has one fucking map, with the only difference being the location of the rings. And that's the reason they chose this style of racing. Not because it would help with the gameplay, but so they could reuse the same asset 18 times. Anyway, moving on, the next game mode is Spellbook Chaos. The goal here is to go around, catch all these flying books, and as you progress, the more will appear. Sounds simple, but just like everything in this game, it's anything but. See, remember how I said that flying through rings was already hard enough? Well, these books are moving, which makes getting them extremely fucking difficult. Like, are you joking? I can barely hit a static object. How on earth do you expect me to catch these? When I first played this, I honestly thought, wow, that's an awfully generous time limit, only to find myself increasing it twice because catching the little bastards was so hard. This mode was actually such a pain in the ass I just gave up on the second level. I mean, I probably could have done it given enough time, but by that point I was so pissed off I just couldn't be bothered. So the final mode is Green Dragon, which is pretty self-explanatory. A dragon is attacking not Hogwarts, and it's your job to stop it by shooting its various sections. And honestly, compared to the other game modes, this is by far the least frustrating. Mainly because you never have to wrestle with the painfully bad controls, and the lock-on distance is fucking enormous. You can literally just sit on the other side of the map and spam homing attacks until you win. It's that easy. Genuinely, the only real issue I found was the occasional drop in FPS, and when the dragon decided to do, this. Oh, and the fact it's immensely boring. So that was Billy the Wizard Rocket Broomstick Racing, and it's just about the laziest thing I've ever played. I mean, I know you can make the argument there was no effort made for any of the games I've played, but this really is the perfect example. I mean, when you prioritise asset reusability over actual gameplay, it's a bit of a red flag. It's also worth mentioning that I played the better PS2 version, since the Wii version uses fucking motion controls to move the character. Essentially, take all my complaints, make them 10 times worse, then add an extra game mode. That's the Wii version. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.